And I welcome this opportunity to address the situation that has emerged in the context of these terrible disasters beyond the scale of anything we've ever seen. And it is, I guess, a concession that should be made that on disasters of this scale, we do need to learn lessons, and some things that may have been unforeseen need to be addressed. But there are so many things that have just been so glaringly obvious about the failures of addressing this disaster that they do need to be highlighted if we're to move forward at all. And just to put it in context, in Eden-Monaro we saw over 1 million hectares burnt. Now that is greater than the entire extent of the damage in the Black Saturday fires in Victoria, larger than the famous Amazon fires recently, larger than the Californian wildfires of 2018, all just within the borders of Eden-Monaro. And associated with that too, we lost over 1,000 homes across the LGAs in Eden-Monaro and close to around 9,000 livestock. And I guess when you stick out that raw number of 9,000 livestock, it doesn't mean a lot to people. But if you're a farmer, as I've lived on dairy farms with my family, and if you've got to go out there and see an animal that's suffering from terrible burn injuries and then have to go through the trauma of euthanasing them, putting them down, and having to do it on a large scale and then dealing with, the corpses, it's traumatic stuff. And one farmer from out the Batlow way was telling me the other day how his kids had to be involved in that too, because these animals were suffering so much they didn't have time to waste. And he was in tears when he was telling me this story. So the trauma and the tragedy out there has been just enormous. And it certainly has been a big awakening about the future we all face if we don't do something seriously about climate change. And that's something we can talk more about. But when we're talking about now the recovery phase and how we deal with that scale of damage, disaster, destruction, it is really disturbing that the measures that are meant to be put in place to help particularly small businesses, and I've travelled all around Eden-Monaro meeting with chambers of commerce in Jindabyne, in Merimbula, Eden, and of course talking to the business community at community meetings in Tumbarumba. It's been a common theme out there, and some of these chambers of commerce have actually surveyed their members. So for example, in Jindabyne, they said that 71% of the businesses that had applied for assistance had completely failed, and they were absolutely mystified by the process. When I was talking to the Narooma Chamber of Commerce, they were telling me that looking at the Austrade package of event support, there's this 11-page document. They've absolutely found it impossible to navigate. And then when we talk about the assistance that's been allocated to councils, it works out around $30,000 per LGA. They've estimated that to stage the Narooma Oyster Festival this season is going to cost them $85,000, and no business, which would normally be the basis on which they support that activity, can afford to engage in the sponsorship that they usually do. So we have to completely revisit the scale of this assistance to these councils. And I think, in the context of some of the other things we've been hearing in the last few days, what's made them particularly angry about that is things like the story about the North Sydney pool $10 million project, which was regional money. And to hear someone from that area saying, yeah, but people from the region sometimes visit and use the pool, just underlined how ridiculous that situation is. And I've had, the Bega District News reporting on the anger of the Mayor of the Bega Valley Shire Council, Christy McBain, who had to deal with those terrible fires of Tathra only a couple of years ago that killed, that sort of destroyed 65 homes, killed animals, no people thankfully, but killed off a lot of business at the same time. And we've just seen the bird perch fold in Tathra, at the double whammy of the two seasons. But she's absolutely livid about the fact that she's asked for, in the past, $5 million to help get them through the infrastructure and repair challenges that they face, and they haven't been granted that money. And then they see $10 million of regional money going to a North Sydney pool. When they've had situations where the disaster recovery money won't cover the loss of infrastructure like dressing sheds and cemeteries and town halls. So that whole scope of that program needs to be revisited itself. But in relation to this North Sydney pool issue, we should look at what the Bega member, Andrew Constance, who's a Liberal government minister, described that as disgusting. And so, this has to be looked at. We have stolen regional money from shires who are really suffering from the damage of these bushfires, watching this money being frittered away in places where it just should not have been. But to go back to the effect on small businesses beyond that, I've mentioned in questions to the Prime Minister from the Lonsocking Brewery that they would normally be employing 24 to 30 casual staff at this time of the season, and now only employing 4. And what the message we're getting from all around these businesses, because they do mostly employ casual labour based on the seasonal nature of their enterprises, these people are now leaving town in significant numbers, because in a country town you lose your job, you have no other option. There are no other jobs to go to, and you're forced to leave town, and that creates this vicious cycle. You start to lose numbers and families and kids, and then you lose your school teachers, and maybe then you'll end up losing the local police officer. So it's a terrible cycle that we have to intervene now to short circuit. Now, of course, the Longstock Brewery wasn't the only example. I've had obviously the feedback in the other question that I asked of the Prime Minister from the President of the Merimbula Chamber of Commerce, Nigel Ayling, who has 140 members of the Chamber, and he surveyed them again and found that the 90 responders basically said, they got no help from the assistance packages that are out there, and indicated that he had 7 businesses that could close in Merimbula within the next 12 months, and that there's a further 20 that are on the edge of closing if they don't get some help. And his quote was that when it comes to government assistance, it's a big fat zero, with 100% of respondents saying they've received no government assistance at all. And this is in the face of them losing 60% of their annual turnover in this situation. And when I met with the Jindabyne Chamber of Commerce as well, they highlighted that 71% of their members not only couldn't achieve success in their applications, but they just didn't understand the process either. It was just too hard. And this is a message that's emerging all around the region, and it underlines the fact that instead of having these travelling buses that are moving around only occasionally, we need on the ground in each town, each significant town, a small business advisor and Centrelink representative to help navigate people through these processes. It just has to happen. I've had lots of constituent feedback about how these buses have failed. Someone from Tilbury, for example, indicated to me they weren't even aware the bus was coming, and by the time they'd heard about it, the bus had gone and it's not coming back. So, we need people on the ground for these next few months through to the next summer season at least, helping people navigate this stuff, and those advisors need to then feed back to government how those processes need to be adjusted and improved and streamlined to facilitate getting money flowing now. And I know, that there's a hesitancy in the government because of the political capital that was made during the global financial crisis about so-called, cheques to dead people and this sort of thing. But that immediate cash in the hands of people during that crisis saved us from going into a recession. Absolutely. And the estimates of the government agencies that were advising us to do it that way was that, we were potentially going to have 200,000 people on the streets unemployed. And that didn't happen. And this is the issue now. That money needs to be landing in the streets right now. If it doesn't happen right now, it's going to be too late. And so, I know there's caution around this and you want to put accountability mechanisms in place, but this double mechanism now of having things going through from the federal to the state government, and this buck passing that's going on, and the Minister Barilaro saying that this is just unacceptable. Well, the buck passing's got to stop, and the buck has got to land on the ground to the people that really need this to happen. So I would beg the government to really take a good hard look at how this is working, and these sorts of chimeric measures that have been taken where you've got a shingle on the door saying no bushfire, the Bushfire Recovery Agency, and then we find there's actually no agency, and then the $2 billion that we've heard has been allocated, we find that there's actually been no appropriation for. It's got to start happening now. The government has got to get off the dime. If there's issues with the New South Wales government, sort them out, because this is burning holes in the government in my community. And so the fire's finished, but there's a fire still burning, and it's a fire of anger, and I'm not exaggerating.